fiesta se formó. La música con variedades, tocamos desde salsa hasta reggaetón. Un vacilón, este es el show de la mañana en el tapón. Son un bombón, tírame remix, listo. Esto es el show de la mañana, el show. Esto es el show de la mañana, el show. Esto es el show de la mañana, el show. Esto es el show de la mañana, el show.
Este es el show de la mañana con Elio,
Esther y Mafer. Este es el show de la mañana, el show.
Exacto. Ya regresamos, señoras y señores. Bienvenidos al show de la mañana aquí en Tu Fiesta Radio, celebrando nuestra música. Estamos en vivo y en directo a través de la 95.7 FM y esperemos que usted la esté pasando espectacular esta mañana con nosotros. Una mañana muy especial. Ya tenemos de regreso a nuestra querida Mafer, pero es servidor Elio Piedra.
Mafer.
Somos
Tu Fiesta Radio.
¡Ay, nada más! ¡Qué maravilla! Vamos a estar hablando español. We also going to be speaking English because it is a very special segment this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. We're also on Instagram, on Facebook, all over the place. What a pleasure. Well, today, as I was saying, it is very, very special, extra special, because we have, ladies and gentlemen, the candidate that we actually couldn't have before, and what an honor this morning to have with us at Tu Fiesta Radio, the house of the Latinos in Alachua County. My people, get excited because Pamela Marshall Coons is here with us to explain and to share her vision, her mission, and why she is running for Alachua County Sheriff Office as another of our candidates representing the Independent Party. So welcome, Pamela, to the morning show.
Thank you. I feel like I should get up and
dance.
and I will tell you that I'm glad that I'm confined, because if I had more space, you could tell that I really can't.
So you like to dance?
I do. I love to do it. I check African American, when I fill out stuff, but when I get on the dance floor, it's questionable.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, what an honor to have you with us. Last night, just so our community knows, in case you couldn't see it, I actually watched the whole thing.
You watched the whole thing?
Yeah, I didn't watch it live, but after, I think I watched it around 9 p.m. after I get done with my daughters and everything that I have to do at home. I enjoy myself. I sit down at the sofa and I said, I want to enjoy and focus on every single, aspect of the debate. Last night was a debate, and we want to congratulate our family from WCJB TV20, our media partners, because I think they did a pretty good job putting that together, very well organized. How do you feel about last night's debate?
Well, congratulations, as you said, to TV20. They pulled this together, and I think it's so critical for the community to have an opportunity to hear for themselves, and that's part of the responsibility of the media, to inform people and then give them an opportunity to make their own decisions, as opposed to what we see day after day, hour after hour, talking heads telling you what you ought to think. I think the public is intelligent enough to hear and then make their own decisions.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah. And Pamela, to start with, last night, what I could feel from your words and what you explain and all that, it seems like mental health seems to be very close to your mission with our community. I would like you to spend a little bit more on that. What do you think is kind of like the biggest challenge that we are having here in our city regarding mental health issues?
Well, first of all, just as with anything else, we have to start with truth. I've worked in housing and economic development across the country, worked and have attended and been a part of housing task force. And when we talk about our homeless population, we have named them something that they're not. If you lose your job, and you end up on the streets, you're homeless. The people that we see every day, those people aren't homeless. The majority of those people have mental illness. There was a woman in 1850, before women had the right to vote, before women could even walk in the halls of Congress. She was a war nurse, and she was in and out of our jails visiting veterans. That's the other problem. We have a history of putting our veterans in jail. They raise their right hand to protect our freedoms, yet they lose their own because they go through the trauma of what happens to them in the military, and they come home and we throw them away. And last night we had as many as 33 veterans commit suicide.
Wow.
We have so many veterans in the Alachua County Jail that we actually have to have veterans court in jail. Well, that's a failure of public policy. When we look at the recidivism rate in our jails, 99% of the recidivism rate is with people with mental illness. Johns Hopkins, Stanford University, Harvard, no one has put together a study that says putting a mentally ill person in a cage is going to cure their mental illness. Do they commit offenses? Absolutely. The majority of them are drug-related or trespassing. But we got people out in the streets. The legislation that Dorothea Dix put together, she helped to open the first mental health hospitals in America. During the 60s and the 70s, we started closing mental health hospitals down. When we did that, our jail populations went up by 500%.
Yeah.
And Maria, my concern is if we don't start this dialogue, if we don't start looking at this from this perspective, if you're going to send them to the sheriff's department, to law enforcement, then we need to be part of the solution. Because my concern is what's next is these children that have autism today, when their parents are so devoted to taking care of them, when those parents die, what do we have in place for those children except putting them in jail? I was at a presentation, and it said that statistically 1 in 4 Americans will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. We don't have anything in place for our Alzheimer's patients. And my mother had Alzheimer's. She wandered off. And we had to call the police because I didn't have any other number to call. But let me tell you, I was out walking the streets trying to find my mother before the police found her because she had also become combative. Well, somebody that's gone to the police academy, and they have done a fantastic job in learning what they learn, but they should not be expected to manage a person with Alzheimer's because my mother was probably going to fight them. And the last thing I wanted to do was see my mother face down on the street with handcuffs.
I have a quick question actually about that because last night also I saw that passion for mental health and all the mental illness that we're experiencing within our country, across the country. And talking about our Alachua County, you just said that obviously they don't belong to the case. It's not the way, right, to put them back in the case. So what can we do then? What are you proposing with those? People that they just prove to be criminals, let's say. What's going to be the process? Because the first question we have here is public safety.
Right. So we're not safe when there are people who are on the streets currently. That's not safe because we're calling them homeless people. There was a woman at the Publix on Tower Road walking out of Publix with her baby, and a homeless, what we call homeless, but really a mentally ill person, attacked her with her child. So as long as we're calling them homeless, we walk by them every day and it's okay. But we don't know when people are going to snap. When they're, if my eyeball was hanging out of my head, you would be trying to get help for me. But because we cannot see chemical imbalances in the brain, we cannot see neurological problems, we can't see trauma.
Yeah.
The 40% of the women that I mentioned that end up in jail because of the trauma, and when the body is injured, the soul is disturbed, and people act out. I interviewed a psychiatrist that said we can't write enough prescriptions to get ourselves out of the mental health crisis that we're in. I believe we have a safety blueprint that we've put together for every aspect of the community, unlike anything that's ever been done before, that can be a model for the nation, because the things that are happening in Alachua County is not unlike other places in the country. When Dorothea Dix saw the condition, 1850, saw the condition of those that were in jail, veterans and those with mental illness and the deplorable conditions that they were in, she started writing the legislation. She didn't have the right to vote. She didn't have a right to even go in Congress to read what she wrote. But her passion helped to open mental health hospitals in this country. But then we started closing them. Well, because you closed them, you haven't cured anything. You have just shifted the burden. Look, if I got a rotten tooth over here and I pull it out and I put it over here, the body is still at risk of being contaminated. I haven't cured anything because I closed all the doors to the mental health hospitals. We've actually shifted the burden to those in law enforcement, and my heart goes out to them. Because who wants it on their conscience that they had to pull a trigger on a mentally ill person? Nobody wants that. They decided to be in law enforcement because they wanted to make the community safe. They're not social workers. And we have dumped that responsibility on the men and women who put on the blue and the green and go out, and their goal is to protect our community. In one of my forums, I invited my opponents to endorse me because they recognize that they don't have what it takes to solve this problem. If they did, the one that's been in law enforcement for 40 years, it hasn't happened. The other one that's been in for 30 years, he hasn't solved it. If all we can talk about is how many people we've arrested, but we haven't talked about how many cases that we have prevented arrest from happening, then we're doing what the definition of insanity is. We're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Dorothea Dix did what she did without having the right to vote. How dare I go to my grave and not do everything that I can for these families, for these children, for our veterans, to change these public policies. We got to stop this. This is nonsense. And it's costing taxpayers, and they don't even understand how much this is costing them every day. And it would not cost that much if we had people in stable conditions. Do you know there are some jails around the country, their medical bills are higher than the hospitals because our jails have become, and prisons have become, the de facto mental health hospitals. That's not sustainable.
I love what you're saying, Pamela, and how you're putting it together because it's very realistic. I will say there are two sides. Everything that involves politics or public service positions, they always have something on the back that people don't understand, and it's part of the business itself. But I love the passion that you have for public serving. And what I see is that instead of punishing people, we got to find a solution from the root, as you mentioned last night, from the houses. And I love that you talk about urban development because everything starts at home, and we share it over here as well. And you just mentioned there are people that are going to jail, but there are families that are being affected outside. And you were sharing with us, and it's something that I want you to expand on it, that you have been able to cover, court cases and all that. I have done the same. I have done court reporting, and I have seen the criminal facing the job, but I have seen the family sitting on the bench as well. And that breaks my heart. The mothers, the grandmothers, the daughters, being there, listening, having crisis, mental health things that are kind of like showing in the moment as well. So when you see the whole perspective, you understand kind of like why the person is in that position and why the family is in that position. So I love how you mentioned that everything has to start from the house, from the urban development, from the housing itself. What do you think, or what's your proposal to start with in the community from the inside? If we're seeing a quota of Hispanic, of Black people going to jail, where do you plan to start to attack that and kind of like reduce it?
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful question because it does seem insurmountable. Like, oh my gosh, how do we fix this? Well, let me tell you something. And I did have a lady ask me, she said, "This is a tall mountain you're trying to climb." I said, "Ma'am, you know what? If somebody had not started climbing another mountain, I would still be picking cotton free."
Yeah.
So regardless to the size of this mountain, we're all humans. Let's just start there. We may look different, we may speak different languages, but we're all humans, and we all have the same desires. There's no different because you speak a different language. Our souls all want to be at peace and enjoy the gift of peace that has been promised to us. We have to get back to, listen, when we went in the homes and started teaching children to call the police on parents, you started to drive a wedge in a relationship that the Creator decided should be there. Whatever children you have, I have, that is a divine appointment. And when we interrupted that flow, when parents can't parent, listen, I had the police called on me. My son was 16 years old, and he was getting smart with me, and I made him go stand outside in the dark. I didn't beat him. I made him go stand outside in the dark.
Time out.
And he went to the neighbor's house. The neighbor called the sheriff on me. We lived out in the county. Instead of that neighbor coming over and sitting down with us and saying, look, young man, I know you're taller than your mother, but she's a lady, and you need to learn how to respect the giver of life. That's how you got here. You need to learn how to respect women. And you need to learn that if you don't learn that in here, then something else is waiting for you in the streets. But they called the police on me. So the sheriff's deputy came to my house. And I said to him, I told him exactly what happened. And what he said was, instead of talking to Brennan, he said, if you have any more trouble out of him, call us. No, that's not the answer. We need to take care of this at home. Because if we don't take care of it at home, guess what you need? Resource officers at school. A friend of mine is a retired officer. He said he had a buddy that they had to call the police on a first grader. And they called the parents. And you know what her parents said? Take her with you.
Wow.
A first grader. So we have lost the basic structure with our children. So because things are not happening the way they should happen at home, I wish that we were redirect those resource dollars to pay officers to be at school. And they need to be there today because we got the threat of school shootings and all this. This is crazy. We used to have fire drills. Now we got active shooter drills. I want everybody that's listening to understand that we have a challenge. If we don't address it in 10 to 15 years, what is it going to look like? When these children that are in school now are adults, your daughters, do you have children? Mm-mm. Do you have a cat?
Mm-mm. Not even a dog.
Nor a dog.
Not a dog.
Man,
but believe me that I think
those pets are real more responsibility than children are because they never grow up and be able to go to the bathroom on their own.
I got some plants, that once a week I have to water them and that's it. But believe it or not, I think myself at if I have a kid when it comes to public safety with laws and everything regarding. And I always tell here over the show, I'm thinking about things. And I don't even have kids. Things that you as a parent should be thinking about it. Right. Because it might not be affecting now. It might be all flowers right now. But think about in 15 years, as you just mentioned, I don't see that in so many parents. And that's something I'll say kind of like intrigues me because I don't get it. And you gotta be involved in your kids' life or in what is happening in your city if you want your kid to succeed.
Yeah, and I would like to translate a little bit because this is very important. Señoras y señores, hemos estado hablando aquí con Pamela. Well, in Spanish is Pamela, which is a beautiful name, by the way. I love that. We have a girlfriend named that. Well, Pamela Marshall Coons es una de las candidatas para la oficina del sheriff del condado de Alachua. Y estamos hablando acerca de todos los intereses que ella tiene en implementar herramientas para mejorar la salud mental, todas las enfermedades que tienen que ver con salud mental y cómo ella quiere expandir en lo que es prevención y no encarcelación, lo cual es un asunto muy interesante que no se ha tocado, no se ha hablado y los exhortamos a que si usted tiene alguna pregunta y quiere realmente hacer esa pregunta, nos puede escribir a través del chat, nos puede llamar, siéntase libre de participar. pero es importante que usted nos deje saber su perspectiva, déjenos saber qué opina, qué piensa. Hemos hablado también acerca de algunas de las datas que Pamela nos compartió de la noche de ayer, que fue el debate, que es acerca de las violaciones, no solamente de los derechos, sino también sexuales y de muchos tipos que pasan en los Estados Unidos alrededor de todo lo que es nuestro condado también. Por acá tenemos, we have actually a comment on our live streaming. It says, thank you, Miss Marshall Coons, for taking the time to talk with the Latino community through Tu Fiesta Radio. Our Latino community is growing in this area. What things have you done to connect, and what are you planning to do for our Latinos? Gracias. So that's a question for you.
Absolutely. And as I said before, when I've lived in places like Chicago. Chicago has probably
I've been there. It's huge.
And every community that you can think of, and you cross one street and the language actually changes because there's so many people there, and the billboards, the language change. What has to happen not only in the Latino community but with every community?
Yeah.
We need to make sure that people feel safe and people feel heard. As a member of the media, knowing that there are people who come to our community and out of fear of what will happen if they call the police, the law enforcement should not be a place of fear.
Yeah.
It should be a place where you know that you can call and get help. And so the goal will be for me to go into the Latino community and to do more of this, to have town hall meetings, to come here and, I need to brush up on my Spanish because right now it's pretty limited. But besides language, we are all desiring safe places to live, that we can feel protected, that women feel protected. Listen, every day there are 4 cases of domestic violence reported in Alachua County. So if there are 4 cases reported, there's more of it happening. And there's so many communities where it is not, it's shunned on to report that kind of stuff. But if I punch you in the face and I'm in the street, I get arrested. Why do we see that as any different? Because it's happening inside the walls of our homes. Because the effects of the trauma of domestic violence spills over, not just with the person receiving the punch, but with the person that's punching.
Let me ask you this, Pamela.
Because the person that's punching is hurting too.
But summarizing what you are proposing, let me go back to my question again. So if we don't put the criminals in jails, or those people that they are committing felonies to our fellow citizens, if we don't put them in jail, so you think we should put them in rehab or any kind of programs? Where was that place that they belong that it's going to make a difference on their life? That's my question.
Well, I haven't said that we should not put criminals in jail. Criminals should pay for what they do. Criminals should pay for what they do. But when the majority of the people have mental illness, and 99% of the recidivism rate is because of trauma-related mental illness or just basic, if you're born with autism, there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. You can't rehab me.
Yeah.
But I'm told now that we're also putting people in jail who have autism, and they do things. So our law enforcement and the men and women that I will be supporting, they need the tools and the resources to focus on real crimes. As I drive down the streets and the roads of Alachua County, and I think, if our community was as unsafe as the jail population represents, we would not be able to drive down the street without dodging bullets.
Wow.
Quick question related to that. What would you say will be your relationship with the court system, with the judge? Because we were talking about people coming in and out, putting people in that might deserve be out vice versa, right? But lately we have seen, and I have heard from the community from reporter perspective, well, that there are so many people. How is it possible that today they cut someone and that person have been in and out for the past 3 months, getting in, violating parole and all that, and the judge are doing nothing. They're just getting in, out. And in that process, they're committing more crimes outside. That's what they're getting now. What do you think needs to be changed in that? And what will be your approach to court system and judges?
I had a meeting with the former president of the National Sheriff's Association. He has a sheriff's department with the highest retention rate, and he put together a program where he did work with the judges and the state's attorney and the public defenders. Because remember, even as we talk about those who've gone to the academy and they know what to do based on what they were taught in the academy, judges, they have their protocol. People who've gone to law school, they know what they know how to do. But who are the people that are standing in the gap for the others? And because they don't know how to do anything except what they know how to do, then they just treat it all the same way. It is as someone explained to me yesterday, it is a very imperfect system. Well, how do we start having public hearings? How do we start holding people accountable? How do we have community forums to really address this challenge? Otherwise, we will continue to pay more to incarcerate people than we do to educate our students. If an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, why do we not apply that across the board when it comes to what's happening in our criminal justice system? There are young people who grow up on public assistance and they start getting medication for whatever the challenge may be. Well, one night they go to bed, they go to sleep, and they wake up and they're 21 years old and they have aged out of the medication, the system that paid for their medication. Stanford University did a study on that. We want to reduce the jail population. Well, 80% of those boys go to jail. 80%. Wouldn't it be better for us to take the money that we're going to spend on them being in jail and continue to pay for medication? Because if we continue to pay for medication, then at least they can be viable.
We prevent them going to jail.
Yeah, and they can be viable tax-paying citizens in our communities rather than being a liability on our communities and breaking the hearts of moms and siblings who know that they have someone that is in jail just because they couldn't afford the medication.
Yeah, I agree. That's part of one of the issues when it comes to the system, because it's like we're helping you but for a certain time, and then that's it, you're leaving the person either. That's what most people at the same time ended up homeless and all that, or when they come from being veterans, it's like, okay, what do I got now if everything just stop?
Right.
So Pamela, we have one more question for you. Wow, the time we you fly by, unbelievable.
I'm done.
You want to stay here the entire day?
Oh yeah.
So, and just to summarize a little bit, hemos estado hablando una vez más, señoras y señores, con candidata para la oficina del sheriff del condado de Alachua, Pamela Marshall Coons, y ha sido un honor. Si usted tiene alguna pregunta una vez más, nos puede enviar sus preguntas, puede llamar, puede hacer lo que usted desee. So let me ask you, Pamela, my last questions before we go. Why the Latino community should vote for Pamela Marshall Coons?
Well, I would like for them to ask themselves, are we happy with where we are now? Number one. Number two, you have someone in me, a person who understands, because I am you. There's not much difference in what's happening in the, when we talk about people that are being incarcerated, we say black and brown. And I have gone to jails, as I've worked in the media across the country, I've gone to jail and the complexion is always the same. Even when I lived in Iowa, in a community where we were 0.6% of the population, how is it that a group of people who helped to build this country, and the statistics don't add up? If we were that big a criminal, slavery would not have existed. They would have killed everybody on the plantation. So how did we get to this point? In the Latino community, we need leadership who will speak truth and not feed people. It breaks my heart when I hear people talking about we got to keep people out when in fact everybody here got brought here today except the Native Americans. And when we talk about excluding people, when we talk about systematically separating children from their families, that's like treating us like we're animals. And that's what we have. You have to have somebody who's compassionate enough to listen and then to advocate, to be able to be there and work on behalf of everybody, regardless to what language you speak, because the Latino community is many languages. Yeah. And from many different places. So just there could be divisiveness in the Latino community with Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and people from other parts of the world who speak Spanish. But we have to understand that nobody wins. Yeah. Nobody wins in that divisiveness. And if we are going to be a community of one, then the one thing that we all should put in our global positioning system every time we wake up is peace. And if we start with peace in the mirror, however you say peace in Spanish.
Paz.
Paz. Yeah.
Okay.
If we all work toward that, and I am committed to having the town hall meetings in every community so that we can see and hear what the challenges are. My background is so diverse. And I've had an opportunity to do that over the years. This position is a Constitution position that should be able to be the position that everybody can look to for solutions and answers. But I will not be doing it alone. We have to have a cabinet of people who represent a diverse part of our community so that we can address those challenges, whatever the challenges are. But let me tell you, I want to put together a group of law enforcement people as well as those who work in other aspects of our prevention. We need to be in our communities looking for the good. Imagine you see somebody from law enforcement and you know they are looking for the good that's happening in the community. And I will run the sheriff's department in the same way. I want to look for the good. I want to look for the good and make sure that we take care of the challenges that do not represent good.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Pamela. We really appreciate you for being here with us at the morning show.
Yes.
Any other question do you might have?
No, thank you for your inputs. And
Can I just say something real quick, though?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, because when people look at me and they say, why are you doing this? And how are you going to run a department? Well, the President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief of all branches of the military without having served. Yeah. Richard Williams. Do you know Richard Williams?
Yeah.
Richard Williams created the baddest tennis player the world has ever seen, and he still does not know how to play tennis. Serena Williams, being the baddest female athlete that ever walked on any stage.
I watched the movie. Awesome. I love the movie.
Exactly. But does he know how to play tennis?
No.
Exactly. And the gifts that the Creator has given me has put me in economic development, where I had to save the state's only refinery, oil refinery. I didn't know anything about oil formulas and RINs and that kind of stuff, but they came to me and they said, you need to save it. We saved it. There was a hospital, our level 1 trauma hospital in the region that served 6 states. It's going to close. They say they need an extra $30 million a year. Well, let me tell you, I told the mayor, I was chief of staff, and at the time it was a $1.2 billion budget and the sheriff's department was under me. But I told the mayor, I want you to go and tell everybody that we're going to keep the hospital open. He said, how are you going to do that, Pamela? I said, you just say it and let me do the work. We pulled together a task force. We created a movement in the community to keep that hospital open, from the governor to the University of Tennessee, which is a teaching hospital. And not only did we keep it open, but instead of $30 million, we brought home $40 million to keep that hospital open. Those are the skills that I bring to this position, in understanding that as the leader of a county, this position should be involved in every aspect. In Florida, we have one of the highest rates of pedestrian deaths. Law enforcement needs to be at the table. I work for the Department of Transportation, but I never saw anybody from law enforcement at any of those meetings. We will be at those meetings because we need to be a part of the discussions when you're designing the roads. And I talked to somebody from the fire department. They said, we've created some systems that make it hard for us to get in and out. So how do we make sure that even with the roads, that they are designed in a way that our first responders can get in to do their jobs? Never talk to first responders, because the engineers who do the roads don't know they're supposed to talk to first responders. First responders who know what they're supposed to do don't know that they should be at the table. Well, I know that they do, and I know how to get us in, not just at the table, because at the table, if I come to your house to eat, everything that you've prepared is already done. I might be able to put a little hot sauce on it or some salt and pepper. My skills put me in the kitchen of public policy. I know how to cook. And I want the people in Alachua County to understand that they will have a leader who knows how to navigate, who knows how to work to solve the big crises that other people say are insurmountable to solve. And let me tell you, until we take back our homes, we will never be able to take back our communities.
Very nice.
I will say there is no doubt that you're very well qualified and that your experience has put you in this position, and you also bring the humanity, the woman care, which I love it. So thank you for being in here.
Thank you, Pamela.
For having me.
Yeah,
Thank you
we
for
really
inviting
appreciate your
me.
time, your dedication, and your passion. And that story about the hospital, I listened to it yesterday. It was very impressive. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And I want to shout out to Ronald as well.
Yes.
Yeah, Ronald.
If you're still sleeping, Ronald.
Are you? Yeah, if you're up. Hey, Ronald. Hey, and let me just say to you, this is fantastic.
You like
Thank
it?
you.
Oh my gosh.
You like it?
I love it.
You've been in other radio stations before?
Not like this. Oh, I used to
Not
work
like
radio.
this.
I used to work radio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I started in the
nice.
business when I was 18 years
Very
old.
cool.
And then started anchoring the news when I was 19. But this, I love it.
Awesome.
I love it.
I'm glad.
you so much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Muchas
gracias. Bueno, mi gente, hemos estado hablando con Pamela Marsha Coons y ha sido un tremendo honor. Ahora vamos a tomar el próximo break, pero vamos a regresar. Vamos a estar conversando con Santa Fe College, el Departamento de Estudiantes Internacionales, acerca de una iniciativa que se llama Sigue Soñando. Quédate con nosotros y no te vayas. Thank you, Pamela, once again. Ya regresamos con el show
Muchas gracias.
De la mañana.
En Gainesville, Florida, la casa de los latinos. Tu Fiesta Radio.
Hermanos latinos, soy Gilberto Santa Rosa y los invito a sintonizar Tu Fiesta Radio.
Hola, ¿qué tal? It's your girl Becky G. Los quiero mucho.
Soy Camilo. Tú sabes cómo va, te habla Nicky Jam.
Hola, soy Shakira.
Dímelo. Raúl Alejandro. Nosotros somos el grupo Manana.
Soy Melina León y sintonicen Tu Fiesta Radio.
Hola, ¿qué tal, amigos? Yo soy Juanes.
Somos Flor del Tabaco y los invitamos a sintonizar Tu Fiesta Radio.
La variedad